memories of the past.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Faiz, and today I will be your moderator for this session. So I hope everyone is doing well, especially like this is Saturday and not everyone is willing to learn a Saturday. Especially when Disney Plus is launching today. So I regard you all for that. Okay, hi to maybe you guys can put your name and where are you from and what you are doing. What's your activity in the chat so we can know each other. Hi, Hanum. Hello, Ari. Hello, Ine. Nice to meet you. Hello, Amanda. Hi, Hanum. Hello from Borneo. Toastmaster member. Reni from Tangerang. Alia from Surakarta. Okay, okay. Okay, nice to see you are here from every place in Indonesia. We have people from Jakarta, Surakarta, Yogyakarta, Bandar Lampung, Borneo. Okay, so glad to see you here. So in today's session, we will discuss about the new normal. So COVID, of course, have impacted all of us and have impacted all the sector of the economy. And it also has created a new landscape which we have to navigate. So the purpose of this session today is to learn more about the post-COVID situation, the new normal. Actually, the transition after the COVID situation, and what is the opportunity that is available for us in that situation. What's the thing that we must avoid, and we will also hear the perspective of the two experts that is here today on how to navigate those situations. Okay. Okay, so that's my introduction slide. Thank you. And so I should introduce myself again. My name is Faiz Ghifari. I'm the founder of Bubais Nutrition Private Limited in Singapore. I'm also a founder of a social movement called Butuh Driver and Gratis Belajar, and I studied industrial engineering at ITB. And now we will go to the next slide on our speaker. The first speaker is Mr. Fithra Faisal. He is the executive director at New Policy. Beside that, he is also the advisor to the Minister of Trade, and he is also a lecturer in the economic faculty at the University of Indonesia. He has his bachelor degree from University of Indonesia, and his master degree from Keio University and PhD from Waseda University. So the format of this session will be a presentation from the speaker. Mr. Fithra will present, and then after that, we will have a discussion with Mr. Bhima. So Mr. Bhima is an economist at the Institute for Development of Economic and Finance. He studied at University of Bradford School of Management, and he also received his bachelor degree from UGM. So after we hear the presentation from Mr. Fithra, we will have a discussion with Mr. Bhima, and then at the end of the session, we will have a Q&A. So you may ask all of your questions at the Q&A. But if you have a question during the session, I mean during the presentation or during our discussion with Mr. Bhima, you may ask the question via our Calendly link that will be shared on the chat. Okay. The committee will share the Calendly link on the chat, and you may put your question during the session. So you are free to ask at any time, but the question will be answered at the end of the session. Okay, but before we enter the main session, we will watch a video from English Squad. Okay, thank you for the video. So now we can proceed to the main session. The first one is from Mr. Fithra. So without further ado, Mr. Fithra, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to you all, the future leaders of Indonesia English Squad, and also good morning to uh, Pak Bhima, one of the most prominent economists in Indonesia, um, young and talented. And then, yeah, so can I operate my own slide, please, so that yeah, it's more flexible for me to do so. Okay, I want to share my screen, right? Okay, so as the theme suggests, we are going to find loopholes. We are trying to find opportunities within this pandemic period. Uh, if you recall from a speech from Pak Jokowi just 1 or 2 weeks ago, yeah, the speech of independence, yeah, at the Independence Day, he mentioned something about how to, what do you call it? In Indonesia, he called it membajak. Yeah, so maybe in English, we're trying to utilize what the pandemic has given us until now. Okay, so how we can mitigate, how we can utilize every loopholes and every opportunities that are available within this pandemic. Okay, so before doing so, maybe it is best for all of you and for me also to introduce the attributes of the pandemics itself. So, if with regards to the pandemic, it's actually driven by the market fear. So, the market fear is shadowing our economy. So, starting from March, okay. So, um, from multiple simulation and multiple scenarios, um, I found that market fear is quite dominant. So it's not the economic fundamentals that play a dominant role, but it is actually driven by the market fear. Of course, our economic fundamentals is not that solid, of course. So it's becoming a problem and a latent problem since the early of maybe the early of 2000. Yeah. So right after the East Asian financial crisis, um, the economy is actually quite deteriorating. If you see it from the contribution from the manufacturing sector to the GDP, is we have the tendency towards deindustrialization. So in 1990s, yeah, after the East Asian financial crisis, at the early 2000s, so the contribution is still very much solid. It's about 29% of the GDP. But now we are experiencing a deteriorating, um, uh, which is actually quite persistent. And now we are having around 19% of the contribution to the GDP. So Danny Roderick um, mentioned this in his article, and he showed that this is actually a phenomenon that is called the premature deindustrialization. Of course, we are having problem. We are having a supply side problem. Even so, in 2018 or early 2019, um, there was an economist, Professor Nuril Rubini, who also mentioned that starting from 2020, yeah, 2020, yeah, the world will be facing an enormous recession coming from the supply side. Yeah. Um, so this is prior COVID, and the COVID itself is just enhancing. It's just actually expedite the process. Okay, so the COVID itself is actually the tendency of COVID is putting pressure on the supply side. What is the supply side economy? So simply say that if you're trying to see how the industrial performance, how the international trade, production, and productivity performance, that is the supply side. So we are having problem, not only in Indonesia, we are having problem throughout the world from the supply side, especially after U.S.-China trade war. So what is Trump is currently and still um, pushing the war is actually getting things worse. Okay, coming back again to the domestic situation. Although we are experiencing a not so solid situation, but Indonesian economy is not that bad. Yeah, it's not that bad. So the one that plays dominant role, as I mentioned earlier, is coming from the market expectation, the market fear, which is now is still shadowing the economy. So in order to mitigate the crisis, we need to actually to reduce the risk factor. What is the risk factor? Yeah, the pandemic itself. So it's better for the government to focus more on health variable because this is the one that is causing all of the shortcomings, all of the burdensome problem in the economy nowadays. Having that in mind, based on our scenarios, um, the most or the worst scenario is coming from still from the health variables. So if the pandemic is not flattened until September or October, so we'll be having negative growth, yeah, negative growth throughout the year within 2020. But if we can mitigate the problem, if we can have a more flattened curve, yeah, maybe within this September, which is actually, yeah, is not much to do here now. Uh, we still have silver linings. We still have hope. Yeah. So yeah, the core idea is how to mitigate the pandemic. The pandemic itself is troublesome, as I told you earlier. So it will be causing a massive unemployment. In 2019, our unemployment, the number of unemployment is around 7 million of people being unemployed. And the pandemic is only worsened the situation. Yeah. So based on our situation, of course, this is an underestimate figure, which is when I mention underestimate, it means that it can be far worse. Yeah. So based on our estimation, is about 20 million people will be out of work. Yeah, 20 million of people will be out of work. Again, this is underestimation. Maybe it can be more. Yeah, maybe a far worse. Okay, and what is making this even worse that most of the unemployment coming from the youth, which is yeah your age. Okay, um, um, last year, yeah, if we count the unemployment number, 7 million of people, 64% of it coming from the age of 15 to 24. So we have a productive age, and the very prime age in the economy is actually being unemployed. So this is actually becoming a problem because we are targeting to utilize the demographic bonus, the demographic dividend, but it is not going so well, yeah, because of the youth unemployment rate is quite high. And even worse, yeah, with this 20 million of people, yeah, I believe the share is very much the same. Between 60 to 70% of it will be coming from the youth age. Okay. Now, this is becoming more and more troublesome. But there are still ways. There are still silver linings. There are still hopes. Of course, this is not a novel Indonesia. This is not the unique situation that we are currently facing. This is happening throughout the world. Okay, so not only Indonesia, everyone is facing the same problem. Um, in economy, we call it the Keynesian supply shocks because this supply contraction due to the pandemic is having and then quite contagious. Yeah, this will affect the demand side, and within this demand side, within that sector, will be creating the so-called domino effect throughout other sectors. So at the first shock of the pandemics, at the first or the early period of pandemics, this pandemic is creating a havoc, is creating a domino effect. So every sectors were being affected at the very first shock. Okay, but again, there always hope. Now, if we see the trend, yeah, at the end of second quarter 2020, entering the first quarter, the first quarter, the first or the first early month or the of the third quarter in 2020, we are seeing actually the trend of mobility, which is quite promising. Yeah. So if we see here, there is a U curve relation. So if we put the baseline in January, it's about here. Is currently we are doing well in terms of mobility, in terms of transaction. Um, but of course, the public transportation is still lagging. But if you see the retail, recreation, groceries, parks, workplaces now is coming into the baseline, which is back to normal. And this apply also almost at every area in Indonesia. If you see here, there is a U curve relation, yeah, in terms of mobility. Yeah. Maybe one of the what do you say lagging region is coming from the region that is actually depending heavily on tourism. Yeah, one of which is Bali. Here, Bali is not getting better; it's getting worse. But if you see the trend map of mobility throughout the region, is actually coming back again to the baseline. So we are seeing a U curve relationship, which is actually good. Um, Comparing the situation within ASEAN, for example, so of course, um, if you want to attract investment, if you want to attract others to do transaction to your country, you need to compare it regionally. So in that sense, Vietnam is the champion in ASEAN. Yeah, so we're still lagging behind, but we are not that far. So and then coming from our sentiment analysis, AI-based sentiment analysis from over 6 million of data points, we are also seeing that entering this third quarter of 2020, the negative sentiment is that were overwhelming the sentiment analysis, yeah, throughout, especially throughout the first and the second quarter of 2020. So the trend is becoming much more, what do you say, weakened. Yeah, we are seeing a weakened um, sentiment analysis in terms of negativity. So we are seeing maybe a hope there. Yeah, because if you put the economic variable there, there are still hopes. Yeah, because the negative sentiment is quite weakened. However, of course, there's no room, yeah, to be proud of. There's no room to be complacent, because if you can see here, the mobility trend is also having a positive correlation with the outbreak. Yeah, having from recalling from the previous slide, I showed you that the health variable is one of the fundamentals that built the economy in 2020, not only 2020, but also in the following years. So we need to be careful. Yeah, the trend is causing the outbreak, and the outbreak itself is actually a quite a constraint to a high economic growth. So it is actually a matter of how we put the gas and the brake uh, at a more, let's say, respectful manner. Sometimes maybe we need to do a circuit breaker if possible, yeah, to overcome the pandemic. Of course, uh, in the future, we need to focus more on several sectors that create a high multiplier effect, especially so coming from all of the sectors that are giving a high multiplier effect. So the one and the most solid sectors that are repeatedly what I say becoming what I say a focal point in several scenarios is coming from the ICT. Okay, so this is the global trend. We can see the global trend that the ICT is actually the champion. Yeah, the ICT meaning that we have the e-commerce, which is actually part of the ICT ecosystem, and also some medical services, food processing, personal healthcare, which is actually the demand is quite growing under the pandemic. But the focal point is still in ICT. So if you see here from the product resiliency coping from the pandemic, most of which actually, aside from the infrastructure, aside from the other sectors, so I see several, what do you say, sectors are actually are pushing are coming from the ICT sectors. So if you want to recover, so if we want to recover, we need to push the ICT sectors. Here also, so based on this, ICT sectors will be the champion, and other sectors that are trying to recover from the crisis or the recession or the pandemic situation is needs to go hand in hand with the growth in the ICT sectors. So, for example, we have also a positive growth during the second quarter of 2020, and not only ICT but also agricultural sector. But if agricultural sector can be, what do you say, can have a marriage with the ICT sectors coming into the ICT platform, so we'll be having a much faster recovery. So the opportunities is coming from the ICT sectors. When will the pandemic end? No one is knowing that for sure. But from several scenarios, maybe we're coming to the worst scenarios, which is actually, yeah, even the worst scenario coming from what I say, math department MIPA from University of Indonesia is still, so we see it. Even the worst scenario is possibly a optimist scenario within this scenario. So scenario one, with small intervention, the pandemic will end around September, which is quite what do you say, uh, far away, from the from what we are currently facing. Yeah, in September we're still staying that the infection rate, the positivity rate is still increasing, and we are not and not knowing when the peak will be reached. Yeah, even the peak itself is still unimaginable given this present situation. Um, Coming again, if we try to see the lessons from the Spanish flu and also uh, the Wuhan situation, uh, a U-shaped recovery, a possible U-shaped, V-shaped, or even Z-shaped recovery is attainable. So if you have the so-called circuit breaker, so Luhan was doing a lockdown, as we remember, at the very early phase of the pandemic. Yeah, they have this option to do the lockdown, and then now after the lockdown, this is we have the what do you say, the Z shape or maybe the V shape recovery. So if, coming from the satellite map, so this is before and after lockdown, and we see that now it's getting back to normal, yeah, after lockdown. So the idea is how to do the circuit breaker. We can have several scenarios, of course, in terms of having a recovery, and it must be coming from four actors in the economy: household, state, and local government finances, business, and human capital. So I want to maybe try to see it from our perspective. There is actually the focal point of all variables will be coming from the human capital, preserve or not to preserve. Human capital itself is quite a focal point, quite very much a focus, because as you already know, we are now entering the demographic period, and we need, of course, within that situation, we need to harness, yeah, the human capital, and we need to utilize the human capital in order to escape from the middle income trap. With doing so, of course, the stimulus package need to be done effectively, and it is to be, yeah, yeah. So a good stimulus and is when the stimulus is coming to the economy. But nowadays, if you see the realization rate is still lagging behind. It's below 30%. So this is becoming a problem. But aside from the fiscal intervention, we need also the non-fiscal intervention that I will show you later on. Okay, how about trade? Yeah, so starting from January to July, yeah, we have quite a big quite big surplus. Yeah, um, we have a surplus in trade around 8 billion of US dollar, and the July surplus itself is actually one of the biggest surplus since August 2011. Yeah. So this is the good what do you say the good part of the pandemic, because the import the growth of import is actually quite deteriorating. But the export here, we still have hopes. So if you see the let's say the trade partner in Indonesia, so we have China, United States, Japan, India, Singapore, and several main trade partners from Indonesia. Some of it is actually creating a positive signaling effect. Okay, and our export to the several partners, trade partners, is actually going well. Why? Two things. Yeah, this is only a what I say, my hypothesis. Yeah, this is only serve as a hypothetical manner. Of course, we need to deep dive into the data, but two factors coming into my mind. Yeah, which is relocation factor and also the China factor. Nowadays, the U.S., Europe are trying, and even Japan are trying to moving away from China, yeah, to diversify their portfolio. Uh, Even Prime Minister Abe, the ex-Prime Minister of Japan, just put his resignation just several days ago. He said that our fiscal stimulus, which is the world-class fiscal stimulus, is also giving what do you say subsidies for the industries to move away from China. So they're giving money to the industries if they want to try to move away from China. So trying to diversify the portfolios. So within that sense, ASEAN and also Indonesia is having the spillover effect. Yeah, so we are becoming the alternative of China in terms of global and regional value chain. Not only that, we also have the China factor. Yeah, China is growing now. Yeah, China is having a positive growth, and but they're constrained by the domestic situation because the industry is still suboptimal. So China is still trying also to maintain imports, yeah, from ASEAN and also Indonesia because they are growing. They're importing from us also. But still, if you remember earlier that I also mentioned in ASEAN, yeah, uh, we are competing, yeah, with Vietnam, with Thailand, even with Philippines, yeah, in order to attract investment. And one of the variables that is playing a dominant role is the way the government tackle the pandemic. Okay, because this is becoming a risk factor for the investors. So when they're trying to come to ASEAN, of course, one of the factor that is quite what I say becoming into their decision factor is how the government mitigate the pandemic, and Vietnam is the champion of it. Um, we still have hope, we still have opportunities, but yeah, it depends on how we can actually mitigate the pandemic because that is actually the biggest risk factor of investment nowadays. Okay, maybe trying to wrap up. Okay, we're still lagging behind. So if you happen to Google my several of my latest books, yeah, this is published in 2019, Globalization, Global Productivity in ASEAN, under Palgrave Macmillan, and 2 year before. So I also published Trade Strategy in East Asia, from regionalization to regionalism. From that perspective, it is actually safe to say that Indonesia is still lagging behind. Yeah. If in terms of global production network, we are lagging behind. In all sectors, the one, and as I mentioned to you earlier, the one that can actually leverage us not only to do the leapfrogging but also to do the quantum leap, yeah, in in having a higher economic growth is actually coming from the ICT sectors, yeah, coming from the ICT sectors. Among other sectors, ICT sectors play the most dominant role. Okay, so this is the last slide. Yeah, in okay, this is actually how to read this in 2014 and 2015. Yeah, this is actually I calculate the difference, the gap between actual output, actual GDP with the potential GDP. Yeah, okay. Around 2014 and 2015, actually we can have more than 6% of growth. Yeah, at that time. Why we missed that chance? Because two things: export and investment. We are lagging behind in export. Our export performance is is having a deterioration over time because of the industrial performance, which is having a massive and persistent deindustrialization, uh, and also investment, because trade and investment is an axis. You cannot have trade without investment. You cannot have investment without trade. So it's actually quite simultaneous relationship. But if I what do you say stretch the series until 2020 and 2021, we'll be having the similar chance. Yeah, we'll be having the same opportunity like what we had before in 2014 and 2015. Yeah, it's coming at the end of 2020, entering 2021. That is why Pak Jokowi specifically mention how to membajak pandemic, yeah, how to utilize the pandemic, because everything is in havoc, everything is in chaos. So if you happen to know the chaos theory, within that chaos theory, there is an opportunity, so we can enter, yeah, the system within the chaos system. So that is the disruption that we're trying to utilize, but the momentum is quite thin, yeah, and it's quite strict if the government is not being able to utilize the fiscal stimulus, is not being able to push the productivity level, is not being able to what do you say, mitigate the pandemic. So this is a challenge. We have the deindustrialization. If we tackle the problem of deindustrialization, we can increase the export performance. Although now we are having the trend towards deglobalization. Yeah. So aside from relocation factor, we have a deglobalization factor also. But it's actually a 50-50 chance to do a deglobalization or relocation. But we still have chance. And then we need to enhance the regionalism, the bond towards the region, yeah, a more institutional bond within the region. Yeah, we can have RCEP, TPP, and so on and so forth. With that, we can escape from middle income trap. So if we can push the productivity, if we can push the industry, we can escape from the middle income trap. So arbitrarily speaking, um, uh, so we need to achieve at least 6 to 6.5% of growth, yeah, until 2030 to escape from middle income trap. Yeah. In order to do so, we need to have at least 9% of export growth year on year. Yeah. To have this 9% of export growth year on year, we need to increase the productivity level, yeah, which is the labor productivity, which is enhancing the youth, yeah, which is pushing the youth into the system. And ICT, as I repeatedly saying, is playing the dominant role, and ICT is actually your stuff. So we need to actually dig deeper. We need to utilize this thing in order to speed up the recovery process. Okay, with that, this is actually a wrap up. So over to you, Pak Moderator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fithra. I think it's a very insightful and comprehensive presentation. So for any of you who have a question, please go to the Slido link in the chat room. You can insert the code there and then ask your question. Okay, so for the next session, we will head toward Mr. Bhima. Hello, Mr. Bhima.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Thank you for being here. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so you have a 2022 skill outlook.
No, that's okay. That's fine. 15 minutes is the most. Yeah.
Okay. From the team, the first one is, what is your... Okay.
Can I start now?
Oh, of course. Sure.
Okay. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. And I enjoying the presentation of Mr. Fithra Faisal. I think he's absolutely wrong when he said that I'm prominent economist. Actually, Mr. Fithra Faisal is the real prominent economist. That's why I'm not preparing any presentation and slide. I just enjoying like a lecture from Mr. Fithra Faisal. So if you have any question related to the COVID-19 recovery or the strategy in the macroeconomic level, I think you need to ask more to Mr. Fithra Faisal. So if I were a student from University of Indonesia, I think I will be like a good disciple of Mr. Fithra Faisal. Yeah. But unfortunately, I graduated from University of Gajah Mada. We don't have we don't have kind of a lecture like Mr. Fithra Faisal, yeah, very sharp and then bold, and he's also showing some, I think, out of the box empirical evidence like we never seen before, yeah, especially about the Wuhan. The Wuhan recovery can be seen through the light of the city. So during the pandemic, the light of the city is a little bit darker. And then after the pandemic is flattened or slowing down, and then the Wuhan become to recover again. And we can see directly how the light going on in Wuhan. I think it's very nice data from Mr. Faisal. So I'm going to tell and then maybe questioning to all of you. I have so many questions. So I just want to take on the micro side, which is the micro is relating to your future career, to your skill. What is the skill that you need to encounter not only 2020, but of course after the pandemic? What kind of the skill that the employer will looking to you? What kind of the job opportunity is there? And we can see how the COVID-19, the global recession, changing the behavior of the consumer, also changing the behavior of the company. So my first question, and you can answer it through the comment. So I need two more participants from all of you. So my first question is, if you want to start a business during the pandemic, what kind of a business do you want to start with? What kind of sector? Or if you have already a business, what kind of the sector that you can see that this is the opportunity, this is the right time to start a business? Okay, from Elvis, yeah, online business, that's correct. And then food and beverage, online courses, yeah, that's interesting one, because education is one of the prospective sectors during the pandemic and if you see that the online behavior also push the student and also university undergraduate student to move from the conventional teaching to the online, like we have this morning. Anyone else? What kind of the business do you want to start during this pandemic? Where's everyone else? I think there's like 100 participants. It's only 4 answering the question. Waste management from Yazid Takiuddin. I think Yazid Takiuddin, you need to open up your speakers. You need to unmute. Why waste management do you think it's an opportunity during this COVID-19 crisis? Maybe Yazid, can you open it? Maybe you can share why waste management. I think everyone talking about the ICT, healthcare, and then education, data, coding, computer science, but you're talking about the waste management. You want to speak up, Yazid? Hello, Yazid? Or maybe Yazid is shy. I think this opportunity, not allow. Okay, wait a minute, I'm the co-host. So I'm looking for Yazid and I will unmute Yazid. Wait a minute, yeah. Yazid, okay, unmute. Okay, I already asked you to unmute, Yazid. Right, Yazid? Not allow? Still?
Hello, Mr. Bhima.
Yes. Please.
I'm just chit chat
with. Interesting.
I'm just chit chat with my friends in any residence and in middle income, right? Middle income, and they say about in my house we a lot of jajan consume some go food and like meals and etc. But we don't know about the waste and parnoan abang-abangannya tuh. Parno gitu, mau abang-abang Parno. So we can, we can design about waste management, but pandemic friendly. I think maksudnya adalah yang saat waste management pandemic itu gimana? So the waste is still up, and help to solve juga gitu sih. So
Okay.
this is, I think, opportunity.
Okay. Thank you, Yazid.
Yep.
I get your answer. So what you mean is when some people order from GoFood, let's say, and they have like a plastic one use of the plastic bag and or the container, the plastic
Minyak
container.
jelantah.
Okay, and then what is minyak jelantah in English? Yeah, X cooking oil, right? So you want to manage it, so it's also benefit to the society because less waste. And then the X cooking oil, for instance, or X plastic bags from GoFood, you can reuse again, or you can manage to make it like a added value product. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, and then this I want to talk with Suleha. Suleha is raising the hand. I think she's want to share the argument. Okay, wait. Suleha. Wait. Where's Suleha? Oh, Suleha here. Suleha Saleh. Okay, I'm asked to unmute. Hello, Suleha. I already asked you to unmute if you want to ask a question. Okay. And then that's something unique we have in the COVID-19 pandemic. So some people starting their own food and beverage, even very small stores, but they connected with the apps. And then I think it's very important that it's a high demand during the pandemic, where people don't want to buy food, beverage. Even previously, some people going to the chat time, going to the Pizza Hut, going to the McDonald's, and then after the pandemic happened, then they start to using GoFood rather than going through the conventional way to order their food through the restaurant or to the stores. So I think that's one thing. And then the other things is about the ICT that Mr. Faisal already told us that the ICT is one of the winner during this crisis because the increase of the data usage. And then if you see from your nearest IndiHome stores where people queue or order through their smartphone because they need the internet to have a better connectivity. Even students need high speed internet during this kind of a pandemic. And then everyone is like a digital bonanza happening right now. I think including that very important things, also the need of the software developer, the need of the more apps, including the education sectors, education, healthcare. So I think it's not impossible that we see today, not only education, but also when we get sick, and then there's like apps that help us to, to meeting online with the doctor, to asking about the medicine, to asking about the cure of the illness through the online apps. And then I want to ask one more thing. Do you think this pandemic will last in 2021 or will end in 2020? Do you think this pandemic crisis will end in 2021 or just end this 2020? Please write it down in the comment. Might end in 2021. All right. The answer is we don't know when this pandemic will be end, because like Mr. Faisal already said before, that even the other mathematician institution and then some of the prominent institute that forecasting when the pandemic will end still miss the target. And even when Mr. Jokowi said that in July, previously in July, the pandemic will be flattened. But we have seen before that in July, the number of the positive cases is increasing dramatically. And recent days, we've seen in Jakarta, the number of the infection of COVID-19 is increased to 3,000 people. In national level, it's 3,000 people, and most of them is contribute from Jakarta. So I think it's very important to see that maybe not in the 2020, maybe not in 2021 or 2022, but maybe we can live together with the virus in the very, very long time. So it's changing the behavior of the consumer, where they purchase the goods, what kind of the tools they want to purchase, and then what kind of the payment. So I think the digital payment is also one of the important things that we see, the booming of the digital payment, because if you transaction with the cash, you'll be afraid of infected by the virus. So you change the behavior to use more digital wallet or digital payment. And the other things from World Economic Forums, because of the changing behavior and then the changing of the industrial landscape, the changing of the digital economy. So the forecasting, this forecast, of course, before the pandemic happened, but I think still relevant because in 2022, the skill that will be looked out by the employer if they want to hire some new employee, the first thing is they look about the analytical thinking and innovation. So please be analytic. Please input a lot of the reading materials during this pandemic. I think you better to get on the lecture materials, and then you read a lot of the important books, and then you also need to write down the idea, the innovation, like previously we've seen that waste management, nobody thinks about waste management during the pandemic, but there's an opportunity. So please write it down, and then if you confidence enough, you can start the business with your friends with this critical and analytical thinking about what kind of the situation happened right now, what is the changing of the landscape, what is the changing of the consumer behavior, what is changing of the supply chain matters, what kind of the distribution you want to use during this kind of the pandemic where people mostly work at home, stay at home. And I think this is the most important things, to have the very analytical innovation and then the critical thinking. So you need to ask, what can we do during this kind of a crisis? Because this crisis is different from the 1998 crisis, different from 2008 crisis, different from 2013 crisis. We have 2013 crisis, the European debt crisis. I think it's totally different from previous crisis. So the question is, what can we do right now? What is the opportunity if not from the business side, from the individual, what kind of tools, what kind of the skill that we need to learn to win this situation? And number two, I think, is active learning. I think active learning is very important. That's why we have today in this online course from the English Squad. I also, 5 to 7 minutes before the session start, I already joined this forum. Why? Because I want to hear, I want to learn more about Mr. Fithra Faisal perspective as an economist. Because I think it is important not only to argue, but also to listen to the expert, to listen what is the trend and then what is challenge we have. So I think become the active learning. So if I'm asking the participant that why only 4 or 5 participants answering my question, and even only one single participant is confidence to talk, even in the English is not perfect, that's okay, but you need to show off, you need to show up you need to become the active learning, you need to ask everything. That's why, because my time is only 5 minutes left, I eager you to asking a lot of the question, not to me, to Mr. Fithra Faisal, because he understand better about the macroeconomic situation. You can ask anything. That this is, I think, the most crucial time to overcome as a active learning. I think that's for me, Mr. Moderator. I give the room back to you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Bhima, for your engaging speech. So now we will enter the Q&A session. I see we already have some question in the Slido. So for anyone else who want to ask question, you are very welcome to go to the link on the chat room and enter the code and then ask your question. You can ask anonymously or you can ask with your name. So the first question is from Samuel Christopher from Jakarta. I think this is for both of you. Okay, thank you. The question is, how do you think Indonesia can survive and maximize the opportunity in both economic and health issue within the pandemic? Well, Indonesia has a lot of debt. Please, Mr. Fithra, maybe you can answer first.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for your question. So actually, Pak Bima is also just being modest, yeah, with what is he told you about. So it's actually a good economist. So you can also ask questions to Pak Bima, which is actually quite have an updated version of what do you say knowledge, yeah, if you compare it to me. Okay, so how can we survive? So this is actually quite intriguing and it's quite tricky. Is it a trade? Can we have a trade-off? Is it actually a trade-off between the health variables with the economic variables? Once Krugman was asked this relatively similar question by a host from CNBC, if I'm not mistaken. And then he replied, the host, that I don't know any serious economist who has actually, what do you say, comparing about those two. So this is quite clear that if we can mitigate the health variables, which is the pandemic, yeah, so we can survive the economy, because the economy itself, we need to see it in a mid and a long-term perspective, and what performs and what construct the midterm and also the long-term economic outcome is actually the health variables. So if you fix the health variables, so you will fix the economy. That's the first one. And the second one, how about the debt? This is also a very interesting question. Yeah, it's not only the debt, but how can we use the debt? Okay, if we use the debt to leverage the economy, it's fine. But if we use the debt for a non-productive sector, that will be quite burdensome for the economy in the long run. This time we need extra money, all money available, not only from the state budget, maybe from the market, to help the economy. Because if we miss the economy in the midterm or in the short term, we'll be facing the so-called economic hysteresis. What is an economic hysteresis? Economic hysteresis is the condition when the economy or the economic agent is failing to leverage themselves, is failing to do a recovery process because the government or the ecosystem are not very supportive. Now, in doing so, in order to leverage the economy, so we need all extra money available. So if um, if we um, if, if we get the money from that is also okay, because with that money we're trying to leverage the economy. So um, a good fiscal stimulus is happening when we can have what do you say, uh, if we can invest it in leveraging sectors, that is the first one. And if it can help the most vulnerable people, that is uh, what I say, the output of the pandemic itself. So so we needed to put it into perspective. Okay, I think that is for me.
Okay, from Mr. Bhima, do you have
Yeah,
something to add?
yeah, I agree 100% that without solving the pandemic crisis first, because we have a public health crisis, and every country lesson learned from China and from New Zealand, from South Korea, from wherever country, even from United States, that some of the country failing to recover the economic faster because they fail to maintain the public health crisis. While the other, let's see Vietnam. The Vietnam GDP growth in second quarter is positive, while the other country is negative, including Indonesia, negative 5.3%. And look about China, that Mr. Faisal already said before that when the curve of the COVID-19 is flattened, and then people believe in the government, because the government is very responsible, and government give a lot of the support to the vulnerable society or vulnerable community household. And then when the trust is higher, then we see that if the government said that okay, it's time to lock down first, and then after the lockdown success, then they ease the lockdown, and then the economy began to recover faster. So the China economy in second quarter is positive 6.8%. I think it's quite high, because in the second quarter is positive 3% more. But the first quarter of the China during the lockdown, especially in Hubei and Wuhan, they suffer minus 6.8% drop to the economy. So the lesson learned here is if we put a strong social measurement like a PSBB, want to continue with the strong measurements, maybe we can recover faster in the fourth quarter, or maybe the first quarter in 2021. But because between the regional government and then the executive in the central government, they have a different coordination, and then they have a different perspective, where Mr. Jokowi is more economic recovery rather than public health crisis first, they put it. So I think it's make the recovery very slow in Indonesia. And the second one about the debt, I also agree that it's not about the debt to GDP ratio, or it's about the how many interest rate that we paid through the government every years. But it's also important, what is the government management of the debt? What is the debt can be used to boosting the economy? Which sector is important or urgent first to boost with the debt money? This is the big debate right now, because what happened, let's see, from the small medium enterprise, the government acknowledged and admitted that they have wrongful in the beginning to allocate a lot of money in the interest rate subsidy to the small medium enterprise loan. And right now the rate of budget realization is a little bit low, because of the misconcept and then misnumber at the beginning of the stimulus package. So I think we as a many participants here, I think undergraduate students, and also many of them may be involved in the activism, involved in the executive organization in the campus. They need to have analytical thinking and then critical thinking. how to use that money wisely and how to use that money to push for the productive sectors rather than consumptive. What kind of the consumptive sectors in the government expenditures? We have two at least. The first one is the budget for employment, for the civil servant employment. It's also quite high recently. And if we use more that money just to giving wages, to giving like an incentive for the civil servant, I think the multiplier effect of the that money to the economy is lower. And then the second one is about the goods and services budget. I think this is also more consumptive rather than the productive. What kind of the productive sector? Small, medium enterprise, and then to helping the industry and to helping the infrastructure, proper infrastructure to decrease the cost of logistic. I think that's the productive use of the debt. But many countries right now, they're asking for the multilateral and bilateral agency like a World Bank and then Asian Development Bank to have kind of a debt swap and debt relief. So cutting the total amount of the debt, so the fiscal space will be like wider, not like tight, right? Like we have today. I think that's my answer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bhima. So next is the question from Rani about conspiration. Many people think it's because of conspiration. What do you think about that? And how can we change such perception? I think now we will start from Mr. Bhima.
Yeah, I'm kind of fans of Jerring's Superman is Dead. So it's influenced me since I was in high school. I listening to the music of the Superman is Dead. But when Jering previously, in terms of the pandemic, said that this is all conspiration, and then Bill Gates create the virus, WHO is part of the conspiracy, and then I said that, whoa, can you give more data? Can you give like empirical studies? No, it just because of the conspiracy. So I think it's very dangerous right now we have. So some people, not all of them, but small number of the people try to influence. That's why we call them influencer. Try to influence with the wrong number. Try to influence with the wrong perception. And I think it's not only bad for that some small people because they don't wear mask. They can get infected every time they have like a community meeting without any health protocol, for instance. But they also endanger the economy. They also endanger the whole population because if this small number of the people is influence the other, and we've seen so many people believe that this is only conspiracy, the COVID-19 is conspiracy, so why we need to wear a mask in the public, for instance, why we need to wear masks in the school, why the school is keep closing, why not opening university and opening the school right now. So I think this is make the economic recovery is slower, and then it's worse when some of the government official also believe this conspiracy theory is true, including Ministry of Agriculture. Ministry of Agriculture, I think, is very ridiculous. It's very funny. While everyone is fighting the COVID-19, he's creating like a pseudoscience, it's not science, but it's perceived as a science. He creating like a necklace from eucalyptus, from minyak kayu putih in Indonesian language. So he said that this can prevent from coronavirus because the necklace name itself is antivirus necklace from eucalyptus. So I think it's very dangerous too. Not only common people, but some of the government officials believe this conspiracy theory. Indirectly, they believe this is conspiracy theory. That So how to change such perception? We as people that based on the empirical fact that we trust the health doctor, we trust the health institution, for instance. So we need to spread the truth information. We need to spread the true data. We need to spread the correct information to the people. Start for our small family, for instance. So if they share something in the WhatsApp group about the conspiracy theory, we just ask them to read again. Not easy to share to the social media. We ask them to read again and confront the truth with the empirical data and empirical number. I think that's the best way that we can do.
Thank you, Mr. Bhima. Mr. Fithra, will you add on upon that, or it's enough?
I think it's already well taken. So any conspiracy theory or hoax information is actually based on our illiterate culture. So yeah, it should be based on research. And I must agree, and I second Pak Bhima on that.
Okay. So the next question is from Aisha. What do you think about the new normal era and how it impact the development of Indonesia in all factor? I think you both have answered this question, but if you want to go deep in one specific area that you want to elaborate, please do. Mr. Fithra, maybe you want to answer this first?
Yeah, I think it's enough. So again, this is not a trade-off. Yeah, you need to choose. The health variable is a function of the economic variable. So if you mitigate the health variable, if you mitigate the pandemic, you can overcome all of the economic burden, which is actually coming from the consequence of the pandemic.
Okay. Mr. Bhima, you want to add anything on this?
Yeah, I think it's already clear. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Go on next.
Okay. So the next question is from Elvis. Economy-wise, small-scale-wise, what can we do in our daily life for the recovery of this crisis? So as individual.
Yeah.
Mr. Bhima, now.
Yeah, my answer is we need to start by helping our friend. If they have a business, please buy from our friend. So this is what me and I think many people do during this kind of the pandemic. So many get unemployed, many lay off from the company. So they're starting their small business, selling food and beverage through the WhatsApp, through the Facebook, through the Instagram. And as a good friends, as a good individuals, we don't need to ask that, can you give me a little discount because I'm your friend? That's not correct, right? Because there's a movement to buy from your friend. So if you see that to help the small business, please buy with the normal price. Don't ask them to, they already suffer from this pandemic and then you asking for more discount. I think it's not wise at all. So that's the first thing. And the second one is many small business, only 13% of the small business in Indonesia is connected to the e-commerce platform. Because of the internet connection, that's the government problem, yeah, about the infrastructure, internet connection. But the other important problem is about how to market the product, how to make design for the poster or marketing purposes, because digital and conventional is totally different ecosystem. That's we as an individual, we can help the small business how to connect with the platform, teach them how to support their business with the creative and innovative marketing poster, for instance. I think that's my answer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bhima and Mr. Fithra.
Yeah. So in the time of crisis, so the choice is actually to spend, spend, and spend. Sometimes financial planner asks you to save more, but if everyone is doing it, so this will create the paradox of thrift. Keynes once mentioned about it. So in times of crisis, if you're sometimes your what I say, micro approach is a bit opposing with the macroeconomic solution. So if everyone is doing it, if everyone is saving, just like the financial planner is told you to do so, we'll be having the terminology of the paradox of thrift. Yeah, instead of having a good recovery in macroeconomic wide, we'll be having what do you say, the L-shaped recovery. So we will what do you say, it is hard for us to do to recover the economy. So I must agree with Pak Bhima. We need to do the spending, yeah, and we spend it to the community, we spend it to our colleagues, we spend it or to the, our family, yeah. If you don't have any shocks in incomes, you just maybe allocate your extra income that were previously used to do hangouts or leisure, and you put it into your friends. You buy the products from your friends. You buy products from the Indonesian micro entrepreneur. So this is will be very helpful. And also, coming from the latest research from Lembaga Demografi FAUI, almost 30% of people or person that are currently unemployed, they're actually switching, yeah, to e-commerce. So this is also a thing to do. Yeah, from the demand side, you buy from your friend. From the supply side, you enter the ICT, you enter the e-commerce. If you have the access to do so, so it's actually better. And this will speed up the recovery. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I actually want to ask a question about starting a business during pandemic, actually, because you mentioned a lot about ICT. And if we look back to the history, like at 2008, Airbnb and Uber started. At 1999, Google started. 1998, Google started, sorry. 1999, Salesforce started. And 24, before the Great Recession, Facebook started. So what is happening during the economic downturn or economic meltdown that make it like a perfect time to start a business, especially in tech sector? I mean, I'm just curious. So, that's a question from me. Maybe Mr. Bhima, if you have an answer. Oh, Mr. Bhima have dropped off, I think. So, Mr. Fithra, maybe.
So yeah, okay. So if you remember the dot-com bubble, so that happened because the ecosystem is not very well supportive at the time. So people are not ready for it. So that creates the dot-com bubble. So supply is not meeting the demand. But nowadays, the ICT sectors is becoming the champion. So the champion of all sectors. And it's not only the sectors that can be very dependent, uh, the ICT sectors is not an independent sector. It can be very dependent to other sectors. For example, just like you say, the social media, and we have the transportation, we have also the travel companies. Yeah, when they merge with the ICT sectors, the growth is quite very much increasing. Yeah, 10 or maybe 100 folds. So the ICT sectors can be the game changer, yeah, within this pandemic. And starting from 2016, yeah, when that is the very first time Klaus Schwab at World Economic Forum mentioned the term of the fourth industrial revolution. Starting from that, So we're seeing a very much what do you say? The growth of the ICT sectors is very much exponential. So yeah, I think if you want to do business, if you want to increase your business, so you need to utilize the ICT sector. I myself is doing some startup business, yeah, um, um, within the digital payment and also well, some schools and courses that is utilizing the ICT platform. So over the years, although it was disrupted, yeah, at the early stage of pandemic, but we see now the traffic is more than tenfold than it was before. So yeah, ICT will be the game changer. So if you want to speed up your business, if you want to channel through your business into the different league, into the higher league, so you need to utilize the ICT sectors, of course.
I see. I see. I see. But how about the effect of the ICT sector to the manufacturing sector? Because when we are talking about ICT, mostly we are talking about bits. Well, manufacturing is creating or repurposing atoms. And you also talk about that we need to hit the 9% export rate to speed up our recovery process. So if all of the business is going to be an ICT business, only like a pure ICT business, do you think it's good for the economy?
Well, of course. Even the manufacturing sector, so based on several research, including mine, so it can be actually simultaneously related. So if you put the manufacturing sectors, if you utilize the ICT, especially technology, especially the chip sectors, and so on and so forth, this actually will revolutionize um, the manufacturing, and this will speed up the industrialization process, which is actually nowadays is quite lagging behind. And with a good and solid industry, so we can have this the minimum growth threshold, so about 9% of growth of export that can create at least 6% of economic growth. So it's actually quite interchangeable. So when I mentioned ICT, so it should be compatible with other sectors.
Okay. I think one last question for me is like, what is the impact of the ICT to the disparity, like to the inequality? Because if we look like some sector, let's say ride hailing, there are gigs worker that may not receive a good amount of like healthcare or like employment benefit, like something like that. And if we talk about like revolutionizing the manufacturing, so we are changing the human with the machine, then what happened to the human? So something like that. What do you think about it?
At first, it also becomes my concern, but later, yeah, after having several academic research, yeah, starting from 2015, so I see that this is actually quite supportive to each other. For example, so one of my research coming from the local startup in Depok, yeah, iGrow, and iGrow, if as you know, is already mentioned several times in international bulletin. One of which is coming from Forbes. Forbes describe iGrow as the Farmville in reality. Yeah, Farmville in reality. So iGrow itself is actually is a tech startup. Okay, but iGrow is actually utilizing the patty farmer, yeah, the most or the least competitive farmer, yeah, in Indonesia. Some of the field that were surveyed by my team, yeah. So this is actually a joint collaboration between University of Indonesia, University of New South Wales, National University of Singapore, and University of Sydney. So we found that this patty farmer which is actually in degree of level of education which is quite low. Yeah, some of them is not even elementary graduates. They can only read and write. Yeah, but now they're acting as what do you say, scientists. Yeah, so that they are street scientists. Yeah, because this agro, yeah, startup, they actually have the so-called knowledge spillover. So they teach the farmers to do what do you say, science, science related activities to increase the production, yeah, of the field. Yeah, and now they can actually to utilize organic fertilizers. Yeah, starting from their own experiment, for this farmer's experiment, they're creating the so-called organic fertilizers, which is sometimes maybe university graduates cannot do it. Yeah, so they are street smart, street science, yeah, street scientists. Okay. So with that, actually, we still have silver lining. The community-based approach needs to be leveraged. It needs to be actually taken care of, and we need to have this quadruple helix relation in order to make these things work. So we need university, government, industry, and community, all in all, yeah, have collaborations. Yeah, instead of competition, we have these collaborations and supporting to each other, and that makes Silicon Valley a Silicon Valley. So we need to have collaborations. It's actually a melting pot, yeah, with this quadruple helix collaboration. So I think instead of having, of course, maybe we will be having a potential job displacement. Of course, that is actually just a natural consequence of technology. Just like Scumpeter said that innovation is a process of creative destruction. There should be some sectors that are marginalized, but there are always silver linings. Even the lowest level of people, they can actually fit in into the disruptions, fit in into the technology advancement, and fit in into the growth process. Okay, so I think there is actually quite big opportunity for all of us.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Fithra, for your answer. Oh, and we have some new question from the Slido, and I see Mr. Bhima is back on the room. So let's move forward to the next question from Ine, Surabaya. What is the most effective way to distribute direct cash assistance or BLT to all people affected by COVID-19 evenly if the allocated budget is insufficient? What do you think, Mr. Bhima?
Yeah, I think this is a interesting question. Yeah, the budget is limited somehow, and we have 115 million vulnerable middle class. So this is not the poor people, but vulnerable middle class. Yeah, aspiring middle class, let's say. So this middle class is also need help because they suffer a lot. And one thing about the recent government subsidy or government stimulus, including the wages subsidy to formal worker, they have some point to criticize or point to improve. The first thing is many formal worker, if they have already registered in the BPJS Ketenagakerjaan, it's okay. It's just fine. They will get prioritized to get the transfer of the wage subsidy. But if we're talking about our working population, there's also informal sectors worker, which is I think contribute like a 57%, 57% from total worker. So this informal worker before the pandemic, they even don't have a BPJS Ketenagakerjaan or like a working insurance. So they don't have kind of the insurance. So they excluded from the government subsidies. And for this one, the government need to approach to the Ministry of the Small Medium Enterprise, and then asking the cooperative, not the bank, but asking the cooperative or koperasi, so they can give like a real data or factual data about the worker in the informal sectors, and then the government can give the cash transfers to the informal worker. I think that's what the government can do. And then the second one is how about the unemployment? About the unemployed, because previously we have Kartu Prakerja. Kartu Prakerja is, I think, is a failed program. Sorry to say, but Kartu Prakerja is a failed program. And then many unemployed recently in the pandemic. During the pandemic, they don't have any government support. So I think it will be like not fair or unequal that the government support the cash transfer for the formal worker, which already have BPJS Ketenagakerjaan. But for those who are unemployed, the government also can support it with the same cash transfer schemes, without involved in the Kartu Prakerja first, because you know the difference is you need to involve in such a online training where you need to provide the gadget and then provide the mobile data first, and then after you completed the training you get the cash from the government. But from the formal worker, they even don't have any training requirement, so unconditional cash transfer, not any conditional, they just get government cash transfer directly. So I think it's not fair that unemployed need to be take care first before the formal worker. I think that's about the priority of the recipient of unconditional cash transfer.
See, very nice insight, Mr. Bhima. Mr. Fithra, will you add upon that?
Yeah, so the problem is the first one is data, and then as Pak Bima very well mentioned, that we have 115 to 120 million of people that are categorized as aspiring middle class. The aspiring middle class is the one that their gap between poverty and the middle class is quite thin. So they're very much the vulnerable part of the society. So yeah, in that sense, if we see the money available, of course, it's not enough. Actually, the central bank can play a dominant role here under Perpu 2, under Undang-Undang 22 2020, can enter the market to buy government bond in order to support the fiscal incentives. So according to my simulation, the central bank the balance sheet of the central bank can actually absorb at the 600 trillion of rupiahs more, on top of what we already have. But yeah, a good stimulus, a good fiscal stimulus, and when the stimulus is being realized, so that is actually the first part of stimulus. Yeah, so we need to do to push the realization of the stimulus, but now is less than 30%. Another perspective to see it is when you have now the ongoing hype on universal basic income. Of course, in order to have this universal basic income, you need to have a good and solid fiscal capacity. The Japanese, with their fiscal stimulus, they are giving everyone 100,000 yen. Yeah, previously Prime Minister Abe asked the parliament to have 300,000 yen for selected sectors, selected and targeted people. But then the parliament reviewed the proposal and asked Prime Minister Abe to revise the proposal. Why? Because they're actually quite very much concerned with the data availability. They said that how can you be so sure that this 300,000 yen is coming to the right people? Okay, so you see it, even the Japanese is actually concerned about their data. So if you compare with data in Indonesia, it's quite just like heaven and earth. Again, so with that, the parliament asked the prime minister to revise the proposal, and he did so. And it came with another proposal, 100,000 yen for 120 million of people in Japan. 100,000 yen is equal to 13 million of rupiahs. Okay, we can have this quasi universal basic income. So there are several researchers that are doing it, but yeah, this is actually quite in what I say difficult task to do. But again, the most important thing to do is to push the stimulus and to realize the stimulus. It's not even the how big is the stimulus, but how fast is the stimulus is coming for the people. So that is actually the first priority.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Fithra. Unfortunately, times is up. So I think we will close this Q&A session. Thank you for all of you who have asked questions. And thank you again for Mr. Bhima and Mr. Fithra. But before we end all of this session this morning, I would like to hear a closing statement from both speaker. So Mr. Bhima and Mr. Fithra, if there is one takeaway that you want the participant to bring home, well, they are already home tonight, but to use in their daily life, what do you want that to be, Mr. Bhima?
Yeah, thank you for having a nice discussion, and thank you for the opportunity that me and Mr. Fithra Faisal can discuss openly to this forum. So yeah, I already give all of you, the participants, the tips and trick, yeah, how to survive during the pandemic, and then be creative, be innovative, and please have a critical and analytical thinking. And this is a great moment for you to start your business if you see and have a good research about the opportunity, about the changing of the consumer behavior, and about the changing of the supply chain. And then yeah, why delay your plan? Start it right now. Just do it, like what Nike slogan is. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Fithra, your closing statement.
Okay, this is your time. This is the time of youth. Okay, because if you compare Indonesia to other countries within the region or within Asia, or you compare it globally, Indonesia has one basic ingredients, which is youth population. Okay, with this youth population, we can actually survive and maybe have a prolonged high growth of in the economy. So, but the basic idea is how to increase the productivity level of the youth. As I mentioned earlier, most of the unemployment coming from the very um, productive age. Yeah. So within this demographic bonus, we need to utilize all variables needed, especially youth. Okay. So if we cannot utilize this youth energy, if you cannot utilize this youth spirit, yeah, we cannot escape from the middle income trap. It can be you can be old without being rich. Okay, that is all for me, I think.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fithra. And that concludes our session this morning. And I would like to remind all of you to fill the feedback form on the chat room. So you can head to the chat room and fill the feedback form. And that's all for this morning. Once again, thanks a lot to Mr. Fithra and Mr. Bhima. It has been a very insightful session. I learned a lot. I definitely learned a lot, and I hope all of you also learn a lot from this morning. So and also thank you for all of you, the participant, that allocate your time this morning to learn. And on that note, I would like to end this session. Once again, thank you and see you on the next opportunity.
Okay, see you again. See you Pak Bima, see you Pak Faiz.
See you,
Thank
Pak
you,
Fithra Faisal.
Fithra.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bhima.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you, everyone, and I will now leave this room. See you on the next opportunity.
Oke, Catherine, Cat. Jangan lupa habis ini kamu say terima kasih ke 3 orang tadi ya, speaker sama moderator. Oke.